Oops, there comes somebody else to come in. And you know what? Let me come back out of the share, and I'm going to see, Jean, if I could make you a co-host in case somebody else comes into the waiting room. I'm not sure I'll be able to see that once I'm screen sharing. I can't hear you, you're muted.
I think you just click on there's 3 little dots over my profile, and you can choose to make me a co-host there.
Yeah, I was going in the other way. I think that'll work better. Bear with me.
Sure. Yep, I am now a host.
The only problem is by doing that, I can't share my screen. So I guess we'll just have to go back to the other way. So can you go back and make me host?
Sure.
Sorry. It didn't give me a co-host option.
Make host. Yeah, that's odd.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, so thank you all for coming. And I always label every talk that I give, no matter who the audience is, ripples of hope. And there's a bit of a story here. This is a picture of where the St. Lawrence River joins into Lake Ontario in northern New York, kind of in between New York and Canada. And it's where I grew up. And over the course of my childhood, I spent a huge amount of time on that water, in that water, near that water. And water is where I find my calm. And in the early morning on a big body of water like this, what you begin to notice as the wind starts up on a given day, you begin to notice little ripples forming across the surface. And I think of each opportunity to do advocacy, and especially when talking with other people who do advocacy, as an opportunity for adding to the power of our voices. And so that hopefully we can all eventually be advocating and have our efforts join up to create some waves of change. So going to jump right into it. For anybody who hasn't ever met with a US legislator, I want to tell you that you can. You don't have to be anybody special. You don't have to have any special training for it. And there's a lot of different ways that you can work on getting in a meeting. One easy way is to go to the website of your own US legislator. Sometimes right on that website itself, there will be a form saying contact your representative or your senator. And if there is, go ahead and fill that out and make a request via that form. Sometimes there's a way to do contact them and you can send them an email to make the request. And sometimes you just find phone numbers, right? And usually they will list phone numbers for both their office in Washington, D.C., as well as their local offices in various locations around their district. And I have used all of those methods. And, you know, I heard last night, Sherry said, hey, you need to go ahead and call the DC office. That's where she has found the most efficiency of her efforts. I have found it with both. So I would say try any one of those methods, or here's a thought, try them all. Because with communication, as we all know, it never hurts to over communicate when you're trying to establish a contact. You can also, if you don't get anywhere with that after a few weeks, you could also, if you happen to have a good relationship with one of your own state legislators, very often they can help facilitate meetings with the US level legislators because they're always in communication and supporting each other's efforts. I've also had that work before. And then another pro tip is go ahead and get on the newsletter list for your own legislators that are at the federal level, because when you get those newsletters, they're sharing information with you about things that they're working on, things that are priorities to them. and also things that it helps to know that they're interested in. And often they'll also give you another means of communicating with them. And so that's another method for establishing some communication. And when you hear back from them, it very often isn't going to be them themselves. It might be a staffer, it might be their policy person. Go ahead and have that conversation. Another way to get a meeting is to attend town hall events in your district for that legislator. You can show up, and yes, COVID is going on, but sometimes they still are doing them via Zoom. And raise your hand, ask a question. If you're there in person, I would take that opportunity to hand them a piece of paper with the information that you're wanting them to think about. Just have something typed up. You could download something from the website of NSSC. It's a very easy thing to do, but also include your contact information. And then say, hey, I'd really love to be able to set up a meeting. When you're doing that, the other thing that we have found useful is to go ahead and bring 2 to 3 copies of the same thing, because often they're going ahead and greeting person after person after person, so they don't want to have something in their hands. So hand one to a staffer, hand one to the person, hand one to another staffer. The more people you're able to get that into the hands of, the more likely they're actually going to end up reading it, right? And then I'd like to open it up if anybody has other ideas that they have had work for them for getting a meeting with their US legislator.
I think you've touched on pretty much all of them. The only other thing that we do here in Maine is sometimes I think there's power in numbers. And so we have a whole group of us. I think there's 27 of us now. And we call, and my friend Joe Pickering is the leader of this group. And we call ourselves the Tear Down the Wall Committee. And we send emails to, the staffers and to the legislators, and we CC everyone in the group. So they kind of can't ignore the email when it's sent from 1 million people. And that seems to get us appointments pretty quickly.
Very good. That's an excellent tip. Good. All right. So moving on, the actual request for the meeting, what do you ask for? Keep it simple. I did things for the most recent one that I had. My name is Leslie Carpenter, and I'm a serious brain disorders advocate and a constituent. I'm writing to request a meeting with Representative Miller Meeks, in my case, hoping to advocate for a specific bill, HR 2611, which would help to improve the treatment of people living with serious brain illnesses like schizophrenia. And then include your contact information. It doesn't have to be extensive. It doesn't have to be your life story. And in fact, I would recommend it not be at this point. And then the form that you fill out may have your contact information in there too, but I always double dip and provide it in both locations if I can, if there's enough room. And during that initial contact, you may choose to disclose that either you live with a mental illness or you have a loved one with a mental illness, and that's why you're interested in it. That's up to you. I think it should always be whatever each person's personal level of comfort should be. I very often disclose that, but I will say I don't always. And then, I try to prepare for the meeting. Generally, once they reach out to you and set it up, they will let you know how long you're going to have to talk. And sometimes it might be a 5-minute meeting. Sometimes it might be a half-hour meeting or an hour. Whatever the plan for the time frame is, I try to really plan out what it is I want to say and how I want to say it, because it really helps you to be efficient with your time. And I'm kind of anal, so I go ahead and practice it. I sit here in this room when nobody's here, and I practice through just to time it and make sure that I'm going to be able to get it fit in. And I edit. I take out what I find to be extraneous. Definitely dress professionally or business casual. You don't want to show up in blue jeans. That's a very basic thing. If in person, try to bring a one-page handout with you that covers the information highlights that you want them to have and your contact information again. If it's via Zoom, still dress professionally. And then the other thing that I have found very helpful is try to do a little bit of research about your legislator so you know who they are, what do they do for work, what have been their interest, what's important to them. Because very often there's a hook there that you can go ahead and touch on when you're initially meeting with them. And it just helps to know that. And sometimes there's not that kind of information available, or you just don't have enough time. That's okay. But it never hurts to do your research and understand who they are and how they usually vote. At the beginning of a meeting, it's always really nice to start out with greetings and thanking them for taking the time to meet, right? Basic human interaction that tends to be really helpful. And then the main meeting content, you basically want to get down to it in terms of explaining why you're advocating for this bill. If you have a personal story, share it in a concise way with enough information to capture their attention and hopefully capture their heart, right? But not so much information that you're going to overwhelm them. And this takes time to really get good at, and it really depends upon the time frame that you're given. And I'll explain that more a little bit later. I think it helps to give a little bit of history about why the bill is needed. And again, the time frame for that information that you give can be really short, or it can be a little longer, depending upon how much time you've been given. Talk with them about how it impacts people with serious brain illnesses. And if there's an example related to you or your loved one, include that. Share one example if you possibly can, because that really helps them to understand this is a bill that could help a person, right? And then ask them if they have any questions or concerns about it. Very often they might not know anything about it, and that's okay, or they may already have some concerns for reasons why they may not be willing to vote for it. Closing the meeting is really helpful. It really helps to go ahead and ask them if they will consider supporting the bill. And you can phrase that. So could I count on your support for this bill? Are you willing to sign on as a co-sponsor? And they may say, no, I'm not ready to decide that yet. I'm willing to look into this. Or no, I don't think I will, but thank you for talking with me about it. My recommendation is no matter what they answer, thank them for taking the time to listen to you and keep it on a positive time frame or a positive setting. You don't want to burn any bridges because sometimes our relationships with our legislators evolve over years. And it really helps because they may not be ready to hear it the first time you meet with them, or even the third or the fifth. But sometimes 5 years later, suddenly they're coming around on it. And it's that persistence and further education and always being pleasant that brings them along. So no matter how it ends up, try to end it on a positive note. And I've always asked if there's a resistance point, could you share what it is that makes you concerned or not wanting to support this bill? Because often they'll share some information where you know that that's not a valid point or that there's a counter argument for. And it helps to kind of be ready and be able to share that immediately if you know it. Or say, oh, I haven't heard that. I'll have to do some more research about that and get back to you. Because let me tell you, that's happened to me a lot of times where they tell me something and I don't know anything about what they just said. So I have to go do legwork and get back with them. And that's okay. I'd rather be honest about it. Now, this is a Leslie Carpenter technique. This is probably not a bona fide anybody official technique, but anybody that follows me on social media knows I do this. I always ask to take a picture with the legislator if there's any ability to do that for a couple of reasons. One is I like to document what we're working on, because it builds momentum for, like in our state legislature, it builds some momentum, believe it or not, amongst a lot of the legislators to know what the bills are that I'm advocating for, who I'm talking to, who they might want to talk with. And it actually helps to get some things to pass, believe it or not. And it gives you a means of when you send your follow-up email or letter to them, you can send them the photo and give it to them and give them permission to go ahead and use that if they want to, because very often you'll see it show up in their next newsletter or on their social media. Hey, I was meeting with, this person about these mental health bills. They want to show that they're talking to real constituents and that they're interested in these topics. So it's kind of a gift to them that they can utilize. So I always do that. And I post, and if I'm friends with them, I'll tag them, or I'll even tag, like, often they'll have a professional page like representative so-and-so. I'll tag them in that because they like seeing that. And often you'll see them share that. So it's just another tactic that I have found to be useful. Now, the storytelling, there's lots of discussion. When you talk to professional lobbyists, they will tell you that stories are gold, but don't you dare take too long with it. Well, I'll tell you, I tend to use however much time I have, and I have learned to be good about reading the room, right? Are they standing there looking at their watch? I have to give a very short version, and my short version is, I'm here to advocate for people with serious brain illnesses because we have a 31-year-old son who's been sick for 14 years with a very severe schizoaffective disorder. He's been hospitalized over 26 times, and we have literally been spending the past 14 years working to try to keep him alive. And so now we have moved into advocacy, and then leave it at that. I think it's perfectly fine to be as brief as that. And many times when you're doing short little meetings at the legislature itself, that's as much as you're going to get out. Okay. Other times it helps to go ahead and share a little bit more. And I do. And I have an example of that here for you all. So I'm going to go ahead and share, when I have a little bit more of a time frame to work within, what I tend to share in terms of our family story. I tell them that we have 2 adult children, and I'm very happy to tell you all that our daughter is very healthy and happy and independent and doing great, engaged to be married, etc. Our son, however, is very, very sick. And so the reason we're doing this work now is very much because of his story. And this is a picture of him shortly after he was born. And he had a pretty healthy childhood, even though he looked pretty pumpkin-y in these pictures. He did spend a few days under the lights for raising or lowering his bilirubin levels. But after that, he had a very normal childhood. He was healthy, happy, funny, artistic, creative. He played competitive baseball for 10 years. And his little sister, she adored him. And things continued on pretty normally, but this picture here on the far right is the last picture we have of him before he got sick. And that happened to be right before a semi-formal dance at his high school here, and that was his girlfriend at the time. And then everything changed. And initially, like many families, we thought we were dealing with rebellion, right? But then it became pretty apparent that our son was sick. And this is a self-portrait that he drew, and you can begin to see the sadness and the beginnings of some concerning imagery in the background. But this picture is probably much more reflective of his experience at the onset of his brain illness. And it's a picture that we did not see concurrently. We found it well hidden in his many, many sketch pads, well into the evolution of his illness. And he had a pretty classic progression of the disease. He called me from high school one afternoon in 2008 and said, "Mom, I'm feeling sick. I think I need to go home." He was driving at the time, and so I told him to go ahead on home. But after I hung up the phone, I realized there'd been something different in his voice. And so I asked somebody to take over taking care of my patients. I was a physical therapist, and drove home and found him upstairs in his bedroom. But over on his desk was our family's largest carving knife. And I asked him what he was going to do with that. And he said, "Well, I was going to make a sandwich, but nobody uses that kind of a knife to make a sandwich." And so I pressed him, and he eventually said, "Well, Mom, I was thinking about killing myself today." And for us, that was the moment. That was the moment that we went from the wonderful before to the pretty terrible after. And so, like every other family that we've met and interacted with and helped, we sprang into action and he was admitted to the hospital. And soon blood work revealed that he'd already been self-medicating with marijuana. And initially the docs and we thought that was primary. And so we got him into treatment for that. We got him into rehab and with a psychiatrist and with a therapist. And he actually ended up finishing up high school out of state at a treatment facility because it's too easy in a college town where we live for somebody to get their hands on marijuana, even when they don't have money, right? So he did graduate high school in the program and came back and worked for a time, taking care of people in group homes, and eventually got enrolled at our community college nearby. And he was doing great, and we were so relieved. And then, of course, he called one late winter night saying, Mom, I've just died, but don't worry, because I've just come back to life and I'm God, and I need to have you go take me to go see Obama and Oprah so I can save the world. And so we did. We picked him up and brought him home. And you know the story, got him admitted the next day with the help of the police because it was before mobile crisis. And he was diagnosed as having a bipolar type 1, right? Meds helped for quite some time, but 2 years later, his illness changed more and he began hearing voices and having very altered beliefs. And so then he was diagnosed with a schizoaffective disorder. And I always share a little bit about this when I do have enough time to do so, because what I hope for them to understand is that this illness does not come on day 1, and you know what it is on day 2, and you treat it and it's cured, right? It helps for them to know that this is a moving target, and that is part of the difficulty of treating it. And over the course of the past 14 years, this has been our life. He's been hospitalized 26 times and in all these settings. And he's been at 4 different residential care facilities. And at one of those, because his brain is affected in a way where he's not aware of his own illness, he chose to stop taking his meds. And they let him, even though he was civil court ordered to be there because of how sick he is. And very predictably, he went right back into another psychosis where he waited for weeks for a bed to open up at one of our 2 state hospitals. And obviously, he's tried to live with us. He's tried to live in the community with community programs, right? And in 4 different group homes. I share the picture of the brains because what I like to educate people about is that people are becoming much more seriously sick and much more functionally impaired because we no longer do a good job of keeping them in the hospital at the beginning of their first psychosis long enough for their brains to heal so that they can become aware of their own illnesses and to be trained in what's going on and understand it, and to have their families trained. Because we don't do a good job keeping people in a treatment setting where they can stay in treatment, people are becoming much more sick. And this is a picture that I share to demonstrate for me personally what it was like before NAMI. We felt like, very much like this grieving statue, we felt like empty shells of ourselves, because this was the first problem my husband and I had ever found in our life that we couldn't solve by rolling up our sleeves and researching and putting our heart into, right? It's pretty devastating when you can't help your own child. And about the most we could do for him was advocate for him and bring snickerdoodles, because as he would come out of a psychosis and come back down towards his baseline personality, he would look around him in these psychiatric units and see all these people suffering. And he would want me to bring him snickerdoodles, not for him, but so that he could share them with all these patients and give them something to enjoy, even if just for a moment.
Leslie, I have to interrupt you for just a second. Just to let you know that my son, every single time he was hospitalized, did the same thing, not with snickerdoodles, chocolate chip cookies.
Yep.
Always had to bring them, and he would give the other patients his last dollar, you know, if someone needed something.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So then I'm going to switch over to talk about the history of the mental health crisis to tie this back to the IMD exclusion. So this is a very abbreviated version of the mental health crisis, okay? And trust me, I know there's more to it than this, but I would like to try to condense it when I'm talking with legislators based upon the policy that we're talking about. So believe me, I know there's more to it. But for the sake of understanding the IMD exclusion, it helps to understand that back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, we had way too many people put into mental health institutions across the country, right? And it was too easy to put people there. They didn't even have to have a psychiatric illness, right? It could be a husband angry with his wife. He could get her committed there. And at the same time, we were really underfunding them and they were very understaffed. So really bad atrocities were happening. And so, with really good intentions, John F. Kennedy signed the Community Mental Health Act in 1963. At the time, Thorazine had come on the market and they thought it was going to be a cure for schizophrenia. Sadly, we all know it wasn't. And they really felt that if they brought people back into their communities and had them treated closer to their families, closer to their support systems, that they would be better off. But ever so sadly, John F. Kennedy was killed within a month of signing that into law, and they never had a champion to build out all the community mental health centers that were intended. And in fact, we still don't have them, right? A couple of years later, the Vietnam War had been going on and the federal budget was shrinking. And so another really well-intentioned bill was signed by LBJ this time. It was the Medicaid Act of 1965, which has a lot of wonderful things in it for our social safety net. But it includes specifically the IMD exclusion. And that stands for Institutes of Mental Disease, right? And what it does is it prevents federal matching Medicaid dollars from being used for any facility with more than 16 beds for people with psychiatric or mental illnesses. They thought if they could keep places smaller, they could avoid atrocities. Well intended, but sadly, we all know that it's had really negative consequences. And, you know, in our state, we've had new access centers opening up. How many beds do they have? 16. Do they need to be bigger in many cases? Yes. Why aren't they? Because of the IMD exclusion, right? It's still affecting things. Up until 2005, states could work around that with waivers, but in 2005, those waivers went away. So we saw another wave of deinstitutionalization after that. Waivers are back now, thanks to the Trump administration about 3 years ago, right? But we still don't have every state getting waivers and they don't completely resolve the whole issue. So what happened as a result of these policies? Well, in 1955, like I said, we had way too many people being placed at the state mental hospitals, about 558,000 across the whole country. But now we only have 38,000 of those beds. So we swung that pendulum too far. And per the Treatment Advocacy Center and the American Psychiatric Association, we need about 123,000 more, right? Our homeless population is currently about 553,000. And our prison population contains within it about 380,000 people that have a serious brain illness. Now, they are not endemically criminals, right? And I know all of you on this call know this, but I always have to explain this because it helps for people to know that people get there in a variety of ways. One is maybe they're homeless and untreated and the voices do take over and they commit a crime. Another is maybe they do the unforgivable sin of sleeping in the wrong place and they get arrested for trespassing. Or here's the other method. Sometimes a family is successful in getting a person hospitalized when they're in the midst of a psychiatric crisis. But before they're treated for that illness and stabilized, they act out and they assault a staff member. And the hospital, rather than instituting better safety practices and treating the person for the illness that brought them there, no, they have the person arrested for the sin of having a brain illness that has not yet been treated. That, in my mind, is the criminal act. This graph does a really good job of showing that as we've emptied out our mental health hospitals over the years, we have simply been filling up our jails and prisons. And then, of course, the other places we know they end up are on our streets, homeless and often untreated there, and also in our graveyards, right? The 392,000 in jail, it's really 12,000 in county jails and about 380,000 in our prisons. These people are not better off in our community, right? And we propose that we don't have to have all or none thinking. We don't think the answer is all community, nor do we think it's all institution, right? Nobody's proposing that. But we do think it's time to move the pendulum back to find some appropriate level of balance. We need a little bit of care all along the continuum. And for too long in our country, we've been sold this very false premise that everybody is better off in the community. They're not. They're ending up in our prisons, our jails, our streets, and our graveyards. And this is, a recovery principle that we talk about. When we talk about each individual person, we always talk about the potential for full recovery. We want to provide them with as much hope as possible, and of course, as much treatment to surround them to help give them the path of full recovery. But what we really know is that in this cohort of patients, not everybody makes a full recovery, unfortunately. And, the third thing that I have no research on that. It's just how it was described to me a long time ago. And it's a thing that's commonly out there. We can argue about those proportions, but what we know is some people are more mildly affected, some more moderately, and some more severely. And what we know is about a third of them are able to live completely normal lives. They're independent on their meds, they're working, they are among us, and you would never know it unless they told you. I know university professors that I teach with at the University of Iowa who have schizophrenia and bipolar, and no one would ever know unless they told you, right? Another third, they do okay in the community, but with some supports, right? They might have an ACT team to come out and help them stay on their meds or attend appointments, but most aren't able to really work full-time. They might work part-time and have some disability. But another third really do need that long-term supportive housing that heals, not warehousing, but they really do need 24/7 staffing in group homes, residential care facilities, or yes, sometimes facilities like our state mental health hospitals. Some really do need that level of care. But nobody is proposing that we return to the atrocities of the past. It has been nearly 60 years, and hopefully our society has learned something since then. We have means of making sure that doesn't happen again. And I've been all over the state of Iowa and some of Illinois, and I'm happy to tell you I've never seen a long-term care facility look as bad as this, but nor have I seen one that looks as nice as this. And as a fellow human being, I feel ashamed of that fact. We could at least provide care in something as decent as that, right? And of course, some of you know my dream. My dream is to build a psychiatric assisting living complex or campus, right? I would love, if I were to win the lottery, to go over and offer to give it all to the state if they'd let me go to one of our state institutes and create this on this big, beautiful campus where we'd have acute care units with first episode psychiatric programs or psychosis programs so that they could learn about their illnesses and stay long enough, right? We could have subacute care units, we could have independent living units, we could have a few group homes, we could have a cafe and a bookstore where they could start to work again with some support and a place where they're comfortable. And we could have these be places that we would be proud to work at, proud to volunteer at, proud to visit, proud to fund. And how do I know this is possible? Because we already create these kind of facilities for another group of patients with a different kind of brain illness. We create these kind of facilities in our society for people that have Alzheimer's and dementia and Parkinson's. If we can acknowledge and recognize that it's not okay for Granny to be walking out on the street in the middle of winter in a nightie barefoot because her brain isn't working well enough, we know we need to step in and get her cared for and housed. I can't fathom why we wouldn't understand we need to do this for our adult children who have a different kind of a brain illness and who mostly don't know it. That's my dream. But to bring it back to reality, what are we really asking for today? We're asking for co-sponsors for HR 2611, which is a bill that Representative Napolitano from California has filed. And as of today, we are up to 12 co-sponsors on that bill. Another one was added today from Oregon, which is awesome. But as you look through this list, please notice that they're all Democrats. So a major push that we're trying to get through is to have people who happen to have Republican representatives. We are hoping to find people that can talk with them to try to get some Republican co-sponsors as well, because what we know in the current environment at the federal government level is that for anything to have a chance, we really need bipartisan support. And let's face it, mental illnesses don't affect just Republicans or just Democrats or just independents. They affect everybody. They affect people from all walks of life, every color, every background, and bipartisan is really helpful. So we're hoping that more and more people will reach out to their legislators and help us push to try to get more co-sponsors. There's a lot of other supporters of ending the IMD exclusion, and it helps to let your legislator know that. There's everybody from NAMI to the Schizophrenia and Psychosis Action Alliance, of course, National Shattering the Silence Coalition, the National Association of Medicaid Directors. That was a new one I didn't know. Jean knew that. That was new information to me. So I was pleased to see that. And that list is growing, and that's really wonderful to see that. So let them know. But you might also let them know that there was prior resistance to passing this before. It was supposed to be part of the 21st Century's Cures Act, right? But it didn't get included in that in the end because the Congressional Budget Office came out with a score that was much too high. They said it was far too costly to implement it in terms of the cost to Medicaid. But the pushback that we have about that is that we know that that was an elevated score for one thing, and it was very one-sided. It only talked about the cost to Medicaid in terms of implementing this, but it didn't consider the fact that what we're doing now is costing so much more, and we are getting lousy outcomes over, if you think about it in terms of this whole patient population. And so what we know last summer is that the Schizophrenia Action Alliance came out with a wonderful white paper that showed that in just 1 year, in 2020, it cost us $281.6 billion to not treat schizophrenia. And this is a link. I have it shared as a PDF. I always follow up with a legislator and send them that link itself so that they have that report on hand and their policy staff, right? Because this is helpful information to help combat the prior resistance to this bill, and it helps to hand that to them, make it easy. Of course, if they want to talk about any other solutions, I'm always prepared with a slide on that. I'm not going to belabor that with all of you guys now because I don't want to keep you on here for too long, but it never hurts to have that and be ready in case they ask you, oh, what other solutions do you have? Because sometimes that really does help to a good, healthy conversation. And then this is my closing slide. And Mary Isa, I saw you join this presentation. I'm sorry, because this is probably about the 1000th time you've heard me talk about this, but this is a drawing that our son drew in 2015. So it was about 2 years into his diagnosis as a schizoaffective disorder. The right combination of meds were not yet found. He was being tried on a gold standard drug that works for many, many people, clozaril or clozapine. It's a wonderful medication for many people. But for our son, it caused him horrendous side effects. He was having grand mal seizures, tremors, incontinence, impotence, inability to swallow solid food. He was vomiting, drooling. He lost about 35 pounds in a 3-month time frame, even though every day I'd stop at the store and pick up Boost or Ensure and take it to him to try to supplement his nutrition. And yet the voices were still out of control, and he'd become suicidal again and was back in the hospital. And a couple of days later, another young woman with the same kind of voices was admitted. And you would see them walking down the hall, covering their ears, saying, shut the blank up, shut the blank up. I don't want to kill my mom. Or the other things that his voices say to him are, you need to dig out your own eyes. You need to bang your head against the wall. You need to cause a tsunami and take out all the people on earth who don't have angel wings. And he would say things like, Mom, can my thoughts hurt people? I don't want my thoughts to hurt people. But he could see her suffering, and so he sat down and drew this for her. And one afternoon, they were sitting down and coloring it as I arrived for a visit. And I turned around and I asked the nurse to please let me back out of the unit. I ran all the way back to the parking structure, got my cell phone, ran back in, broke their rules, and took a picture of this right before he gave it to her because it was so meaningful to me. He gave her messages like peace, kindness, compassion, health, hope. If he could do that while he was that sick, we can do what we can do to help make things better to take care of people like him. And the other thing is, if any of us were diagnosed with cancer today or one of our loved ones, wouldn't these all be the same things we'd be hoping for? Compassion, kindness, health, and hope. So as you consider how you vote on various mental health bills, and especially considering signing up to this bill, I hope you'll keep this in mind. And I also hope as you're driving down the street and you see some homeless person looking like they have clothes on that are way too big and they're looking disheveled and looking up at the sky and ranting at those birds like our son does, that you'll keep in mind that those people all want the same things in their hearts as all of us do. And ripples of hope, they come from this quote. Now, many of you know that what he was talking about, the social injustice at that time, was apartheid in South Africa. And thankfully that has been eradicated. But I'm here to tell you that what's happening to people in our country who live with these serious brain illnesses is the social injustice and the humanitarian crisis that's happening right before us all that not enough people even know about, and certainly not enough people care about. So we're hoping for more people to join us in this fight. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Leslie, I just want to say thank you so much for being a voice for all of us. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So I shared a little bit more of the personal story with you than I would in a standard meeting with a legislator. But I'll tell you, when you're given the time to do that, always take it.
Absolutely.
Because if you can get their heart and bring a tear to them, it sounds really hard, you know, wrenching and everything. And does it keep me up at night to do this? Absolutely. Does it take a lot out of me to do this? Yes.
Absolutely.
But not nearly as much as it takes for somebody to live with one of these horrible illnesses.
Exactly.
Right.
We, my husband and I do the same thing, and we really tell personal story to at CIT trainings,
Yes.
and we go into psychology classes and health classes in local high schools and do the same thing. And it is that personal piece. And yes, it's different. You have to know your audience, your time, all of that. But when you touch someone's heart, they never forget it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Leslie, do you share that entire PowerPoint with the legislators sometimes?
Yes, so that one that I just shared with you, I got through it in a lot shorter of a time frame, but I went through that on Monday with Representative Miller Meeks. I got through that with her, and I've gotten through it with, you know, presidential candidates, as you know. I've gotten through it with many of our state legislators, and not every time that we see them, but whenever I'm given an opportunity to have an extended time frame, I take it. You know, I'll schedule an hour and I'll take them through that. And of course, you know, depending upon the audience, more focus on state or more focus on federal as well. But yeah, I share it as many times as I can.
Would you share it with us? So because I have a meeting scheduled, but I don't have a PowerPoint put together.
Yeah,
So-
I went ahead and made a PDF file of a shortened version of what I just showed you. I pulled out the pictures of our son's story because I think it's so much better for you to have your own personal story in there instead. But in terms of the content about the history and all that, yeah, I gave a PDF copy to Jean and she'll put it up on the website.
Yes.
Or somewhere that you all
Yes,
can get to.
As soon as our new website is up, I'd like to put it up there. But for now, what I can do is email it to all of you.
Excellent.
I have a couple of questions. First of all, I want to say thank you, Leslie. You told my story. And it's heartbreaking.
Told all of our stories.
Yes.
You did, and I'm crying.
I'm
Can't
sorry that I made you cry.
cry,
I saw
so-
you crying and I
It's
wanted to
okay, I
stop
don't
and
think
tell you I
we
was
ever-
sorry.
We never we never get over it, and it
I know.
breaks our heart, because I think we all have children that are precious and dear to us, that are so much like your son, and that's what the world needs to know. The world needs to know that these are not just, disheveled looking monsters walking our streets. They're precious, precious people.
Yeah.
So I have a couple questions. So we should do a PowerPoint, put together one if we want to start advocating and really trying to push for better resources for our family members.
I don't think you have to. I will tell you that I didn't for a long time when I first started. You don't have to, but if you do and you start sharing that, what often happens is that they soon regard you as somebody that knows what you're talking about, and eventually they'll invite you to come and give talks for various things, or they'll come and say, what do you think about this idea? When you start presenting stuff in that way, it somehow elevates your presence, and you become useful to them. And so that helps you to build that relationship. So if you can and you want to, I encourage you to. If you're not there yet, that's okay too.
Do you have any idea when HR 2611 is coming to the floor?
Yeah, no idea. That's exactly why we're working to try to gather more momentum around it, and why we wanted to help do this tonight, to try to encourage more people to help us in that effort. Because we really do need to get more co-sponsors, and we really need to get more bipartisan co-sponsors to try to get it any type of legs.
Okay. And I have one
We need
other.
to try to get a senator as well to
Yes.
introduce the bill that mirrors HR 2611 in the Senate.
Okay. And I have one other thing, side note. I have been looking through all types of organizations. I'm trying to find a scientist or doctor who's willing to do research into anosognosia. I have gone to the Brain and Behavior Research Foundation because I'm looking to try to back somebody financially to do that. So if it ever comes across anybody's desk, please get in touch with me.
Yeah, I will tell you that I think that Dr. Xavier Amador is already doing some research, and his is it an institute or organization?
It's two. I think he has.
The LEAP Institute.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are good institutes. And then, Aoife Lertori for many years did research on it. But I would probably go to the LEAP Institute and Dr. Amador as one location where I know that they're doing that actively.
Okay.
That I can think
have
of.
reached out to them. I just haven't heard back. So
Yeah.
thank you, everyone.
Sheila, did you reach out via email or did you call?
I left a message and I did an email.
Okay, so say sometimes I've had better luck with people when I've called a few times, and it just depends on the person because they hear your voice and
Yeah.
it's harder to ignore. Leslie, I have a question for you, and this is specific to getting the bill to be bipartisan. So I contacted Senator Grassley here in Iowa, and what I got back was what I call shameless self-promotion. I'm sorry, y'all, but it didn't respond to my question. It just said, oh, well, I'm doing this, this, and this, and it had nothing to do with the IMD exclusion. So how do you recommend we come back with, we respond to that? Because I've shut down somewhat with who I have available to me here in Iowa.
Yeah, I know it's hard. I did get a meeting with Senator Grassley's health policy person and talked to him through it, and he had a good understanding. He serves on the Senate Finance Committee, and they're considering, what bills they're thinking about moving forward. If you give me till tomorrow, I can dig out the email of who that is, and I'll try to forward that to you so you can contact him yourself.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah. And that's really good advice for all of you. If you don't get luck with, contacting your legislator, try to talk to a staff person at one of their offices and say, hey, I know the senator might be too busy, but could I possibly get a meeting with his health policy person? And very often they'll make the time for you. And that's another road in. And that's a little bit of a longer acting ripple of hope, because sometimes they'll be working for that same legislator forever. In the case of Senator Grassley, who's been there for longer than I've been alive, I think. Or sometimes these people move on, they go somewhere else. But the information you're giving them, that education, you never know where that's going to lead to. And that's why I think of ripples of hope, because sometimes things evolve in different ways than we think.
Okay, thank you, Leslie. I would
Yeah.
appreciate it.
You bet.
Leslie, I have a question. First of all, thank you for doing this today. I wanted to ask you, I know in Arizona and other states, this is a proverbial election year, which is somewhat of a useless axiom because it's always an election year somewhere in the world. Has that been a point of resistance that you've encountered anywhere?
Yeah, it is sometimes, but generally speaking, in terms of election years, there's nothing more of a selling point as people who are helping fix the mental health system. So usually it's not one of the partisan things where they're going to come down on one side of the fence or the other. Almost everybody's working on this. Just some are much more active on it than others.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Yep. All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you all for coming. Please, please, please do think about getting meetings with your legislators, or at least emailing them. The more touches we can get, the better. More and more ripples.
And if you need help, if you want anyone to attend the meeting with you, if the Zoom meeting, Barbara and I are, Barbara Gates right there, are going to be meeting with her representative Levin on Monday, and we're hopefully having a Zoom mock meeting tomorrow. Snowstorm, it may cause a problem with that, and Paul Webster from the Hope Street Coalition, and Rebecca Reinig. And so, anytime we can help, don't be afraid to call me, email me. We didn't get together a PowerPoint presentation. I didn't have these slides until, what was it, today that you sent them to me? So that's why we didn't get that fancy with it. But
Amy, we still have 3 days.
we still have 3 days. Well, you're welcome.
Leslie did it.
I will email them to you.
Leslie's
And you're-
going to give it to us. So done
Yes,
deal.
but we don't have an hour. That's the problem.
No,
We don't
but
have-
I'll
we
take it
have
and
an
edit
hour,
it.
and there's 4 of us wanting to speak. So that may not work for this particular meeting.
We're gonna experiment, but not tomorrow, but we'll talk.
Okay.
And on that subject, Leslie, I know you said something about a PDF, but what I need is the PowerPoint.
Yeah, you can convert the PDF back over to a PowerPoint. It's just with all those pictures, it doesn't send very well because it's too big of a file.
So you have it on PowerPoint. You don't have it on Google Slideshow.
I don't.
May I suggest, because Google Slideshow is so awesome, anybody can access it with a link, and there doesn't seem to be any size constraints. So, and I'm pretty sure you can just upload the PowerPoint right into Google. So if I know you have lots of spare time, but if you wanted to just, maybe that would like save a few steps and make it universally available.
It might. I will give it a try. I'm not the most tech savvy person. Jean's gonna back me up on that.
Support guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
But I can look into trying that for sure. And in the meantime, the PDF will work. I've used that before when in a pinch, believe it or not. But I will certainly try. And the shortened version might send in a PowerPoint. I'm not sure. I'll take a look at it.
Just for everybody's, just FYI, there's a really awesome app. You can sign into something called WeTransfer.com. And it's free, and you can transfer large files that you just drag it over. It couldn't be more simple. I've had video footage, hundreds of megabytes. So WeTransfer.com is how you can get your file, your ginormous file, to someone else.
Okay, good to know.
Very good. And yeah, you may be right that the mental health, the MHA isn't in favor of that. I don't know. Yeah. I know they weren't on that list.
I believe they're not in favor
Yeah.
because they're worried about going back to the days of the asylums. That's my understanding anyway.
I wanted just to make a point. One time I got our North Carolina NAMI, our state, because a lot of times they meet with a lot of the legislators, and they're there and they meet. And I had tried to contact Secretary Hall from Veterans Affairs in Raleigh, and I was not getting any luck. NAMI's office called them. We had a lunch meeting, and it was supposed to be just a quick lunch meeting at the NAMI headquarters there in Durham, and it ended up being 2 hours. And his secretary was sitting there taking notes. I mean, it was totally amazing, but I would have never thought to go through them to get to the others. But that was another really good way.
Yep. And that can vary a lot depending upon your state and your chapters and who's in there, but it's worth a try. You never know. Pull any lever that you can. That's my advice.
No stone unturned.
That's right. All right, everybody. Thank you so much.
Everybody. I really appreciate this time you've given us. Thank
Hearts
you.
to
Thank
all.
you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Take care now.
Everybody stay safe.